Welcome back. We are in episode 2 of season 16 of the BuiltOnAir podcast. Good to be back with everybody. We have with us today myself, Ali, and Camille, as always, and special guest Melanie Smith. Welcome, Melanie. Good to have you on our show. We'll learn more about Melanie and her story and what she's up to later in the show. But I will kick us off with what we're going to be talking about today. The BuiltOnAir podcast is an hour-long show where we talk about everything Airtable, keep you up to date on all things Airtable. We always start with our round the bases of what people are talking about in the different communities, new features, new functionality from Airtable. Then a quick shout out to BuiltOnAir, our primary sponsor. And then we'll learn more about Melanie and what she has going on and how she came into this world of Airtable. And then Melanie's going to walk us through one of her bases and she calls the Tech Vault. And then
great name.
Yeah.
And we will give a shout out to how to join our community. And then finally, Camille's going to finish up. If you watched last week's episode, this is a continuation on using N8N with Airtable and some automation work on that front. So with that, around the bases. First thing I was going to highlight, obviously, I don't think any of us are in France right now, but there is a big conference going on in France, the No Code Summit, which I believe is a organization based in France. And I know there are some people in our community that are out there, so shout out to them. Hopefully you're having fun, but if you want to follow what's going on, this is their Twitter handle. I think they had a live stream going. Yeah, it might be going right now, or maybe this is a replay. So fun stuff. I haven't seen any announcements or anything. I do believe Airtable was there. This was a bigger one than just Airtable, so it was kind of all no code, low code platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I saw a photo of some of fellow consultants just sort of at a cafe, just a group photo in France. Like,
jealous.
Next year maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
I think there is people that have been on the show that are presenting, and so good stuff going on there. Okay, as far as announcements, there was one announcement from Airtable. New formatting options. Who's had a chance to play with this and can walk us through the updates?
I am slightly confused about them because I couldn't see them in a currency field, but in this screenshot, it has the $sign for, the second number. So I don't know if it just isn't fully rolled out yet, but I tried it yesterday and wasn't able to get it to do it for currency fields.
I did it. I was able to do it with a formula that's formatted as a currency. So I don't know if
I couldn't do that either. So yes, it's there for number. Just to explain what it is, it's you could already have had decimal places, but now you could control the formatting, as in, is the comma your thousand separator or is it your decimal? Mm-hmm. And then I like that there's an option for local, so it presumably will read your browser settings and will adapt if you're in America, where we use a comma for the thousand separator, or period if you're, I think Europe uses periods.
Yeah.
You can also abbreviate large numbers. One of my colleagues here has been asking for this specifically for currency fields, which is why I was surprised I couldn't see it. I'm sure it's probably there today. But yes, you can shorten things up to, if you're dealing with millions as a number, you can just put the M symbol, which makes numbers much smaller and easier to understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the currency placeholder.
Well, it would be on a currency field still. Can you change the type to currency?
Gotcha.
Which, at this point, do we need a separate field type? No.
Right.
Yeah. There it
Okay,
is.
so you have the options. I didn't have the options. I assume it will show up in my account today. I was trying on an enterprise account, which is why I was surprised.
Yeah.
Scott
Yeah.
Rowe says most countries are opposite of what America does in terms of comma versus period.
This is true. I know a lot of especially European users were asking for this for years now. So this is really exciting stuff, I'm sure, for them.
Yes. If there were ever a week to release it, it's when you have a no-code conference in France.
Absolutely. I'm still waiting for the ability to format currency values with a formula. So you can get a currency string. That would be
Yes,
the biggest thing for me. I would kill for that.
I would agree. I think there's some, this is all code underneath. I would love if that were a formula function as well, that if I needed text along with whatever number is being represented, I could format it with a decimal separator, a comma separator, or abbreviated. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, two things that I think are still needed. One is the ability to just set like the defaults, because you have to do this on every field. You have to configure it, right? So it's pretty annoying if you want a standard currency across all your base. You got to go to every field. So if you're using lots of field numbers, formatting would be nice to set like a base level default.
I would agree. Way back when I made a script and also a custom app that was never released that would bulk change field configuration options. It obviously is incompatible with these new settings because they were added recently and I can't see them in my account to test them. But it is possible to develop a solution that will kind of run through every number field or currency field in your base and adjust the settings for you. Although feels like that should be a first party feature and not something that you would have to code yourself, which is why I never released it. But it is possible.
Well, do we know if these new features can be updated that way? These new settings?
They certainly should. I feel like it would be weird if they added a different under the hood. If you've ever played with creating a new field or editing fields programmatically, each field type has an options parameter, and under options it will change depending on the type of field. So for currency and number, it used to be decimal places, which was some number up to 10, I think. And now it would make sense to me to put that as a property under that same options parameter for thousands for abbreviation. If they put it somewhere else, I think that's poor design. I'm going to assume they were consistent.
Well, one thing that I don't believe is there yet is so like I think Allie mentioned that under the hood, this is still just a number. So if you're using a third-party tool like a portal or something, this information does not get passed along yet in the API. And so you can't, the formatting does not carry forward in other tools, which is unfortunate. So those tools, you would have to configure them again to format it the way you want if they support it.
Right.
When you're scripting inside of Airtable, you have the option of doing get cell value or get cell value as string, for which the API had the same thing. Because if you got the cell value as a string, presumably it would read $61.9M. So you wouldn't have to format it, yourself in whatever, front end you're using. It wouldn't be a number, obviously, because M and $sign aren't numerical. It would save you time.
Yeah.
Well, this is a huge, monumental. I think this is probably one of the top requested features for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's finally there to some extent.
Awesome.
So that is good. Here's some discussion. Meredith says, hallelujah, commas, periods, way more formatting for number and currency fields now available. So lots of discussion here in the BuiltOnAir community about it. And I know I saw it on Reddit and Facebook and other places. So That is good. It's finally going out. Okay, continuing on with the BuiltOnAir community. This was something I first saw this from Scott. I also saw this posted elsewhere, but mentioning that the paste feature where it would auto expand rows at some point a few days ago broke. And I haven't tested this. What does it actually do? Does it just not, it just doesn't paste the rows that you were pasting?
I've seen it not paste, and I've also seen it like kind of transpose all the values to vertical instead of actually in all of the fields that you're trying to paste it into. I have not tested it in the last 2 days though. Hopefully, I know that a couple people reached out to support, and support was like, yeah, that's a known issue. We're working on it. But I don't know the update.
Looks like as of a day ago, it was still happening.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's unfortunate that because that's been there. That's been there from the early days, and it's very useful. I mean, it's pretty common. You paste and expand the table.
Yeah, I think the workaround is probably to, if you right click on a table name, you can do import or insert one of those, and paste table data is an option. So you'd likely be able to do it there. I don't think the bug affects that method, but it is less convenient, and it means you can't do it from within an interface. So hope that it is fixed soon.
Absolutely. That is the workaround that Airtable suggested. I think it was Brandy that shared a screenshot of support's response to her in the Facebook group. And they recommended exactly what Camille just said in the intro.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds good. So hopefully they get that fixed. You would think that would be like, it was working before, so the code is there. You'd think it wouldn't be too hard to bring it back.
Yeah, I don't know what recent update would have broken that feature. So
yeah. It's also good to know that I'm not the only one that releases bugs in production code and breaks things.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah. All right, here's one. This was kind of cool. Marcus in the BuiltOnAir community gives a shout out to the podcast. We did an episode I think it was last season, and using the sleep feature. And he reached out to me and said, hey, can I get that script to basically put a pause in your automation? And I thought this was kind of cool how he uses it. So basically, he doesn't show the base, but my assumption is he's expecting people to fill out things, and then you can click a button to like validate the record to see if everything has been filled out correctly. And if you haven't filled something out, it must update a cell that says you forgot to fill this out, and then it waits there like 30 seconds to see to give you time to fill it out or something. So it's kind of interesting, built like UI inside of automations. You don't see that very often.
Very cool.
So yeah, that is cool. All right, continuing on. Here's another one. This was kind of cool. This was, I saw it on Twitter or on X, and Ian put together a base that pulls data from Zillow if you're house shopping or looking. And he actually kind of created the site. He put it up on Product Hunt, and so you can actually purchase it. What I liked about this is, Airtable, I think lots of people have always kind of had this idea of using Airtable as like a way to build some kind of mini app and then sell that app. But it's not great. Like there's a lot of issues with it that it hasn't worked out well. But this was kind of a good use case of it that it's not too difficult. So basically how it works is you pick the market that you want, and then you duplicate the base, and then he must have automations in there that pull from the API to populate the market that you're looking for. And so kind of a cool use case of actually being able to repurpose a mini application that could have commercial use built inside of Airtable. So
Very
we'll
cool.
see. Good luck with that. I don't know how much it costs. Let's see how much it costs. $40. So, monthly.
Per month, yeah.
$40 a month. Okay, good luck with that. But yeah, so it is possible to build some kind of business application directly in Airtable.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, any comments?
No, exciting stuff. I like it.
Yeah. Hopefully, I would love for Airtable to make it actually possible to do this more and truly use it as a platform to build and sell commercialized apps, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think the biggest it would probably be like you can't push new updates to the people that have duplicated your template. So it's like whatever time you duplicate that template, it's frozen. You don't get the new features.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's why I never really went down that path. I've had lots of ideas of things that could be done, but more headache, I think, than benefit at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to Table Forums, a great website for communication or discussion of Airtable related stuff. Scott did just a shout out to Scott, who I think is on listening. He did a webinar with using Airtable and NoLoco, and he also demoed how to use NoLoco on our show on the last season, and so went into more detail. This was sponsored with NoLoco, and gives great insight into that. So if you're looking for a portal, I feel like I'm seeing NoLoco more and more. Maybe it's just from Scott, but I've seen it from other people promoting it more. So this is starting to get a lot more traction as being a viable solution at the portal side.
Excellent.
And then lastly, also from the Table Forums, only in, amongst real Airtable enthusiasts will you get such a heated discussion of check boxes versus drop downs versus text fields. But it's a great question. Airbender Marcus asks, when do you use checkboxes? When should you use a single select field or a text field to kind of automate triggers and whatnot? So good discussion. Scott talks about not using text fields because of the issue of typing, and that will trigger the automation multiple times. So a drop down is beneficial to just trigger it on select. And then Kavan goes into more detail on kind of all the pros and cons of each and when you might use one versus the other.
I tell people whenever I'm doing consulting or I'm setting something up, I really try hard to steer people away from checkbox fields. They're so easy to accidentally check and uncheck without even noticing you did it. The single select field requires 2 clicks, so it's much more intentional if you want to change that value. And that's generally what I'll do is I'll have a single select field. One of the options has like a little lightning bolt emoji that's like start automation or whatever. I'll name it appropriately. And so if you set it to that, it's much more intentional. It actually triggers the automation. And then that same automation can change the value to say automation run or whatever. I find it so much more safe, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm similar in my methodology. I do have several instances now where I'll build a base and interface for the intended team, but they don't have access to the base. So in those instances, I might have a automation run off a checkbox because it's triggered by a button click in an interface. And it basically means you can only click it once, which sometimes is intentional. Like, apply this template. I only want you to do that once. You shouldn't be reapplying a template 4 times to the same record. But in the instance where you may not want or need that, or if you want to have, you know, to report to the end user if an automation failed, what the error was, sometimes I'll use a single select field and have extra options for error, record not found, or error, runtime error, or something like that. So you could communicate, not only did it fail, why, rather than them having to like dig through their emails and trying to find those kind of alerts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, here's a counter argument for checkboxes over single selects, is that single selects can sometimes get overridden with non-wanted values. If you like paste accidentally into it, it'll automatically add that value to the drop-down list. Or you can create it. A lot of times I'll like misspell something and then like hit enter and it creates the misspelled version and adds that to the drop down. So there are some caveats to drop downs, but also similar with checkboxes, you can't set a default value, but you can with single select. So that's a plus for single select.
I like to use single selects, especially in interfaces, to trigger different automations. Like because then I can just use one automation and the button on the page. I have several different buttons that set that same single select to different values. So then I can use conditional logic and be like, if the value is this, do this part. If it's this, do this part. And it saves on the number of automations I have to have.
Yeah. It's great not to have 10 trigger fields.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly what Jan said there. I like the idea of an action field to host multiple triggers. That's exactly what I do. I usually call it interface actions. And it's just a like field that's not visible in the interface, but the buttons all drive it. Nice.
Yeah. So hopefully that's some best practices for you to carry out in your builds. And that kind of concludes, last week there was a lot of discussion of news and updates. This week was relatively quiet. One major new feature, one major new bug, about par for the course with Airtable.
I have one other bug that it keeps happening. I don't know if I'd call it a bug, but some people were talking about it in the community or on Facebook, where in Chrome thinks that every keystroke I make is a password field in Airtable now. So like,
oh really?
If I search for a field name, or if I'm scripting or like anything, I'll type something and it'll be like, do you want to update your password to first name? Like, it's infuriating. It's like been going on for at least a week now, and it really is bothersome.
Interesting.
Some of my users have reported that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be annoying. So they must have done some kind of update to their UI cells. Yeah. I wonder if they switched out a library or something, or updated.
Possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's on Airtable or Chrome's side, but Airtable is the only site that it's happening to me on. So I'm guessing it's on Airtable's side. Yeah.
So, well, all right, Airtable, get to work, make those fixes. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about backups. So yeah, you want your data not get overridden with passwords and whatnot. So you want to back up your data outside of Airtable. That's best practice. OntoAir Backups is the solution for that. We'll help get all your data plus your attachments and outside, store it in Box, Dropbox, or Google Drive to make sure that your data is secure and available if anything would happen to your Airtable account. And so today we're talking about snapshots. We're talking about that all month. We have a new guide that will explain everything there is to know about snapshots, how they work in Airtable. And thought we'd end with a comedic relief. Hannah posted this in the BuiltOnAir community. Always make sure to have screenshots. I've dropped the database, but don't worry, I made a screenshot. You mean snapshot? Snapshot, right? So difference between a screenshot and a snapshot. We want snapshots for backups.
Yeah, ideally.
Ideally, yes. Screenshots maybe gives you a little bit. You'd have to retype it all yourself, but
yeah, awful.
Yeah. So check us out on ontoair.com. You can also use BuiltOnAir for a discount when you sign up, and that will help you out. So, all right, let's move on. Melanie, let's learn a little bit about Melanie.
Yay, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on the show. Do you want to maybe start out by telling us a little bit about your background and how you discovered Airtable?
Sure. I am a computer scientist by education and quickly learned that I really didn't enjoy coding. So I've always been someone who looks for the tools that just don't need as much coding support. But I love data. And so, databases are kind of my love language. And so being able to combine those two, I think I looked at Airtable a long, long time ago and just wasn't totally impressed. And then I found it again, maybe a year ago, and kind of fell in love with it. I was like, this is what Access was supposed to be back in the days of Windows 95 and, all of that kind of era. But anyway, a client turned me onto it again and had me kind of redo their database. And I was like, man, this is a really solid tool. I am dealing with a little bit of, I call it software rage, after all of the pricing changes, and that kind of has changed some of the plans for what I'm actually going to show you guys today. But anyway, it's been a good relationship so far, for the most part.
That's wonderful.
I appreciate the decor in the background, really driving home your values.
Yeah, you too could have one. Oh, wait. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yes. Etsy. Great place.
Love that binary heart. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. So were you doing consulting work before you discovered Airtable? And now
yeah. So I started Blue Tree Data in 2017 and with the hopes of doing analytics for whoever would pay me dollars. And what I realized is that no one was ready to do analytics. They needed help with do we even have data? And what does that data look like? And is it clean? Is it reliable? And how do you deal with that? And oh gosh, our software doesn't work together and all of those things. And so I kind of morphed from, I would say, the data science, data analytics kind of area back into, I would call it data architecture and data warehousing and that sort of thing. So I worked across a bunch of verticals, hospitals, engineering, finance, nonprofit world, all different kinds of genres. They all have the same needs. They all have messy data. They need somebody to clean it up before you can actually make it useful. So I've spent a long time doing just kind of that data warehousing fundamentals, and I'm finally raising up better clients that are ready to kind of go to that next step. I mean, it's a smaller percentage than the ones that just need cleanup, but it's definitely a fun space.
Absolutely. And do you use Airtable to do a lot of that normalization of the data?
So I actually have more complex use cases than what Airtable can handle. So we use a lot of Tableau Prep in the background, and I've been exploring Trifacta, which is an Alteryx product that is white labeled by both Google and Amazon. And it's a super expensive tool, but it's a nicer tool, more mature tool than Tableau Prep, but they all do that ETL work of, sucking data out and transforming it and putting it into a good format. And then usually once that flow runs, I will then import it into Airtable if that's the end goal there. So.
Excellent. So are you using a lot of the data visualization tools in Airtable now, or actually building out full on apps and simple?
Yeah, I would say both and. For super simple use cases, Airtable is great. I'll show you a couple of the, simple stuff. But I would say the majority of my clients need something more like a Power BI or whatnot. So it's kind of it's a trade-off, right? Of you can have real time connected to your data, but super simple, or you can, go this other path and go Power BI, Tableau, whichever front end. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's cool. The charts are nice, but they're not quite where
right.
Be.
Exactly.
If you want to hit a wall fast, try and make a pivot table. You're going to run into several limitations.
Yeah, it's rough.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see what you've got to show. If you want to share your screen and give us the tour.
Absolutely.
Do a segment real quick.
Sorry, my bad.
Just a second. All right. So yeah, you're going to show us your tech vault. If you want to get your screen ready.
Let me, I'm going to try to pull this out so I can see you guys at the same time. So hopefully that doesn't mess up my sharing.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. All right. So I'm just going to start on the interface side because I think that is the majority of where we use this tool. But so kind of the use case for it was because we do a lot of data cleanup, we are trying to just figure out how to document what everybody has. I get lost a lot in, you have 40 clients and which version of QuickBooks are you on? And, what tool are you sucking data out of and where is it all headed and all of that. So I needed something to kind of be the CRM of technology for my clients because everyone has a fairly complicated stack and all of that. And all the CRM tools, you can some of them you can finagle to kind of track some of that, but it's not elegant. It's not really, it doesn't have all the reporting that I would love to have. So part of what we have been doing is building this out as just kind of, this is our internal documentation for those types of client projects. And then all of a sudden I realized, hey, this could actually be useful to the client for all these things that people don't love doing. And why not have both be true? So what you're seeing today, I call it the Tech Vault because it is basically all the metadata about all the tools that are part of your toolbox. I'm super original with my naming, so suggestions are welcome. So this is just kind of the dashboard, but I'll come back to it in a second. This is the core of the data, is just the toolbox of here's all the technology that is, in use. It is, it's got a lot of just metadata about it. And what I really love is that I've gotten all the formulas down here of here's your cost per user, here's your, base cost that's maybe annual, and then you have a monthly user cost or whatever. So it gets to where you can get a comfortable annual cost in there. I can add users to the paid list or the free list because most tools have, some kind of combination there. Renewals are in here. The renewal frequency is in here. I always forget about those renewals that are every 3 years or something like that. And I forget to put it in the budget. And then I feel very sad when that comes around. And so this is just kind of, my brain needs it. But what's really cool is that I have linked this to what I just call base tables. And so if you think of just CRM tables of this is the where we've got all the logos loaded and most of the websites, we're still filling in the privacy and security policies, compliance capabilities, because we deal with a lot of clients with sensitive kind of data. So just being able to know if a tool is capable of a certain compliance standard, and then having the what type of licenses and what kind of nonprofit discounts. If you don't live in the nonprofit world, generally software tools are very generous with different types of discounts. And so some of them publish it on the website. Some of it you have to go through TechSoup or another kind of third-party verification and all of that. So this is where we have internally kind of created this base. And what that means is that our clients don't have to enter all that data. So when I link the tool here to the tool in the base, it sucks in the logo, it sucks in, all of those links. That way, I don't know, it's just easier. We also have a ticketing thing in the background that is kind of cool. So I'm not in love with my buttons yet, but I was trying to preserve real estate on the screen. But if I go in here, and of course it's not working. Oh, because it's already there. So it basically links to a record request form, and there's a new or correction option, and it's pre-filled with all the URL parameters that are out there, and then it just asks what needs fixing. And when you send that in, it actually creates kind of just a little ticket in here of here's that request, and then kind of some just add it to the library if it's brand new, or edit the record, just kind of some shortcuts for my office manager to go in and update those records. It has a callback URL we've been trying to automate. So like when this gets done, can it just automatically update the other one? And we're getting close. We haven't won on that front yet, but it's, I don't know, I get excited about that kind of thing. So the other button is the new thing. It's the same form, it's just different request type. Again, it's pre-filled with the name at least, and then they can provide some extra information if they have it. And that goes through the same ticketing interface. So anyway, that kind of makes it pretty easy for managing they don't have to go look up where the security and privacy policies are. So that's kind of the back end, I would say, on just the data that gets entered. The renewals is something that I have been loving. And being able to go here, and I've got the links to the billing site, and I've got it where it's sending an email to ClickUp, and some Slack messages here and there of just reminders. Because I don't know if you guys are like me, but it is a constantly evolving ecosystem of trying new tools and swapping things out. So being able to get those reminders in time to actually shut down the account or whatever, instead of after it charges and then you go through the refund and all of that kind of stuff. So this is one of my favorite pieces. Something that's interesting with nonprofit world is the concept of programs. And so being able to budget according to programs. So in small business world, that would be like product line or entity or something like that. But basically each of the tools can be linked to whichever program that the organization has. So that way it comes up with a cost per program. Still working on how, if it belongs to more than one, how to split that out so that it's an actual split cost, which is very similar to like how you would split fixed assets or that kind of stuff in the accounting world. So anyway, it's basic right now and it's good enough.
I have an idea for how you might be able to do that.
Oh yeah, please share.
Yeah. If you, presumably you have an annual cost field on the tool level, right?
Yeah.
You would also have a link to the program associated with that tool. I would have a count. That's how many programs is this tool included in, and then a formula field that divides the annual cost by that count. And then this annual cost number that we're seeing here rolls up that formula instead. So it's only, because the default is going to be 1 or 0, I guess. The default is 0. It's not linked to anything. So it shouldn't mess up your other instances.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. I think that would work for the cases where like level loading the cost is the method. There's some more complex methods of like, this one has 3 users that are part of this and 2 users that are part of that. And so I think you would have to need like a middle table to kind of define some of that. But
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, I love your idea. That may be like an 80% solution or something there. So thank you.
That's your beta.
Yes, absolutely. So, so that's what these programs are. Then I've got the same thing for people. So this is me. I cost my company $2,800 a year. And I cost my other company $200 a year. My office manager, I've got some vendors in there that have some licenses that we either bill back to them or we just cover for them depending on the case there. The really fun part here, I think it's fun, is that here's your budget. So I know that I need $11,400 a year, and here's my monthly numbers. I haven't figured out how to get null months, or like months that don't need a budget to show up in the graph, but it's fine. And then I've got it rolled up by quarter just to show that kind of view. Because you can see that we have a really big month in May where we pay a lot of bills, but we have some really low months later on. So being able to properly save up for that and all of those things is really great. We also do a review at least every year, but sometimes it's more often, of going through all of our monthly subscriptions and logging in and making sure that we're on the best pricing so that if we need to move up to annual or whatever. There's also some future consideration pieces in here. So if I'm thinking about a tool, I can kind of add that in and filter the budget differently and get kind of those numbers. And then on the privacy and security side, this is something that I don't remember who it was, but it was a web developer was working on privacy policies and talking about how it just makes sense to include links of all the tools that you throw data into in your own privacy policies so that it's very clear and all of that. And so this is basically, here's the list, and you can see I've got some filling in to do in that base table there, but being able to identify which ones have, I call it basic PII versus sensitive PII. That's really important for insurance applications and all of that. And so this has been really a fun project to kind of put together and just kind of dream about how it's useful, because none of this is actually what we intended to use it for, but it's super useful for us internally. So anyway, I think that is, that's kind of the interface side of things. So that's really the bulk of what I had. I'm happy to jump into the base if there's questions or anything, but yeah.
I had a business question. So do you offer this as a service to your clients of like managing and tracking their?
Yeah. So it was interesting to hear your Zillow use case. I really wanted to deliver this as, that point in time copy of your base. So everybody's base is a little bit different. It's tweaked to their needs. But really the service that we're offering is this base table database of keeping that up to date. And with synced tables, that makes it really easy for the data to then be pushed out to everybody. I am feeling a little insecure about being able to offer that to clients on the free plan. Nonprofits don't have a lot of extra dollars to spend, even though Airtable has great nonprofit discounts available. So anyway, I am still trying to figure out how that's going to land. But we're working on version 2. That's going to be a Supabase stack with a different front end on it. So figuring out how to keep all of that kind of master data in sync is going to be a really fun project in the near future for sure.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you have one base that you keep track of everybody, and then you have a base for each client that has the interface, or at least
that's the current Airtable side design. I at one point had wanted to be able to pull the client data back into another master base so I could run reports of how many clients are using QuickBooks Online, the nonprofit version versus the advanced version or whatever, and kind of run some of those metrics. But anyway, I think that's going to be in the version 2 where everybody is kind of in the same database to begin with. So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what's cool is like, this is a real product. Like I haven't done any research, but I think there are like paid solutions that cost a lot of money to kind of keep track of all of this, but
yes,
you built it all in Airtable.
Yeah, they do cost a lot of money, and I already spend way too much money on software. So, yeah.
And graphically, it just looks nice.
It does.
Have a very clearly defined color palette that you've stuck with on every page, which is something I don't do, but should.
Allow me to inspire you. It was actually more accidental than purposeful, but it does because they have the drop downs that are colorful. A lot of this is just because it's colored by the same drop down. So, yeah.
Looks great.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Melanie, for sharing that with us. And people can find you, especially, do you only work with nonprofits, or are you open to all clients, or?
No, so I actually have in 2 companies. So Blue Tree Data, we work with small businesses and nonprofits. Then Data Capacity Builders is kind of our nonprofit arm that I am working with a finance expert to kind of collaborate, and kind of what I've done for data sets, she does for books and budgets and all of that. And so tying those together is what we do over there. So anyway, yeah, we would welcome anybody.
Great. Check her out at bluetreedata.com. And thank you, Melanie, for enlightening us with your tech vault. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for letting me share with everybody.
Yep. All right, quick shout out. If you haven't already, please join our community, builtonair.com/join. That will get you in. We have a very active Slack community of thousands of Airtable users and fans, and you can ask questions, share what you're working on, and just join an awesome community. Also, subscribe to our BuiltOnAir YouTube channel. Make sure you're getting access to all the latest podcast episodes. With that, Camille, let's finish up our automation sequence with N8N. There you go.
Okay, so here's where we left off with the last episode. Just as a refresher, what I've built is a dynamic watch list, which is basically me saying, here are these different fields in some base or bases in my workspace. I want to be alerted on certain field changes, but I want those alerts to go to specific people, either controlled statically, in this case, always alert Camille for this field being changed, or dynamically. So in this case, alert whoever is assigned in either of these 2 field IDs for this field being changed. So the base that I'm using to demo is a simple podcast, tracking thing. It's one of Airtable's templates. And you can see I have 3 different assignment fields: hosts, producers, editors. And the whole idea is I have a couple of different dates and a status. And some people are going to be interested in the recording date, and some people are going to be interested in the release date, but it may not be necessarily both producers and editors. So that's sort of the background. And last time we made a N8N automation that will automatically create and update your Airtable webhooks, which are required for this particular methodology to work. And then the next step is to actually log updated changes. So in order to demonstrate that, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to add a date to this field. That's it. So in the background, I should have an execution that will have run. Ooh, that's interesting. It's not here. Well, I'll talk through what should have happened in the background. Looks like, okay. So basically, it's not letting me stay where I want to be. See if I can force it. Technical difficulties, they're fun. Basically what's happening is I'm waiting on a webhook to be triggered. Again, those are Airtable webhooks that are fired when the specified fields are updated. Next, I want to do what happens when you trigger a webhook in Airtable. It will just give you basic information about that webhook. What you need to do after that is get the webhook payloads. So that's the information that was actually passed to that webhook in any of its previous iterations. The next thing I'm doing is a code block that is getting the last payload in that array of any time it's ever been run. I only care about the most recent change because that's the one that just happened. This is using N8N's code block. Some of this can likely be done with some of their more no-code or low-code tools. For some of this process, I've just elected to just write it out in JavaScript. I'm sure someone would be able to adapt this work, but I'm just transforming it by getting information that is relevant that I want to store for later on in the process. The webhook ID, what was just called, the table ID, the record ID, what is the record that just changed, give me the timestamp of that change. And then what's really nice about Airtable's webhooks is that it will give you the current cell values and the previous cell values. And that's what I care about, because what I want to do at the end of the day is send an email that says this value went from X to Y. And I need both of those values in order to do that. This area here, this sort of diamond formation, is splitting it up so that I have what did the values used to be and what are the values now, organized by record, and then I can compare. So using this handy pre-existing node, I'm able to take the row or record ID and compare it against those two different arrays and find only the field values that have changed between them. And then I just do some more cleaning up. That's just orienting it in a convenient JavaScript object. And then from here, I'm doing a simple get record call from Airtable. I'm doing a filter by formula. This should be familiar if you've ever used Make. It's the same process. I'm filtering down this sort of meta table that I've established, and I'm looking for anything that has that webhook ID. So I'm able to find the appropriate record that is relevant. I changed the recording date. I just know that that would be this this field here for all dates, this watch list. And the last bit of this workflow is parsing any logged changes and returning any new applicable changes. So this diamond over here is telling me what has just changed when this webhook was fired. Give me those new changes and then add it to anything that was previously logged before. I'm dumping all of these changes into a JSON field, and you can see what the sort of running history is. Basically, I went in and just deleted a bunch of dates. And those are sort of the pre-existing values that I've been recording. And then I'm combining those together and then just putting them back into Airtable. So hopefully that makes sense. I now have one record in this separate base that is logging For as long as I want my reporting period to be. I've done this daily, you can do weekly or monthly. Here's are all of the changes that have happened, which record changed, which field changed, what did it used to be, and what is it now. The last step in this process would be something that you would again have on a running schedule. In this case, I believe I do it daily, but the general idea is whenever it's time to send these updates, find any watch list that has something to report. So in this case, these two have data in them. This one has no changes, so it's not going to get sent anywhere. The next thing it's doing is what I've done to store values in as compact way as possible. Long text fields have a very generous character limit, but there is a limit nonetheless. So instead of storing the table name and the field name, which could be quite long, I've stored them as the IDs, which have a consistent and short length. That's also helpful because if you change the name of, say, recording date to something else down the line and you continue to log changes, this object here is not necessarily going to be able to tell that those are the same field. So logging it as the field and record IDs makes everything consistent as it goes. So this process here is just looking at my table schema, finding those field IDs and replacing them with the field names. Because when I get an email, I don't really want to see IDs. I want to know which record is which and which field is which. So that's all this is doing. It's just replacing field and record IDs with their. And then from there, this is a very annoying process to figure out, but what I wanted was for every unique change, record A, field A, I want to identify who cares about that record and that field. Again, in my table, that's determined by who's assigned to it, and it's also determined by the watch list. Who I've just determined cares, just generally, which field I should look at or fields. And then I want to duplicate that unique change for each person that cares about it. Then I want to split that up into if Clark Kent is subscribed to all of these different changes, I want to get all of the changes that are relevant to Clark and put them over here. And I want all of the changes that are relevant to Wally and put them over here. At the end of this sort of row, what I will have arrived at is one email per watch list per person with every record that matters to them in a single email. And then simple HTML trickery to make your email look good, and then Outlook to actually send the email. So if I run this manually, the hope is that it works. So we can watch it sort of go along. It's now finding each change that has happened. In this case, you could tell that there's a lot that has happened, which is why it's taking a long time. There's, I think, 24 rows that were changed. It's then splitting it up by relevant people. It became 46 because it's the same change duplicated across who cares about that record. And then it's grouped back down. So there's only 6 unique people who need to be alerted, and those are their updates, and then sending them out. And then what I'm doing at the very last step is, you could see it just ran, I'm resetting this back to nothing. So the next time that I run this process, I won't be alerted of those same changes again. If I refresh my email, you should be able to see, they all say me, but you can see here are Diana's updates with the names of the records, and I kept the IDs just in case, and then each of the fields that changed. But if I go to Bruce's, it's a slightly different list because he's assigned to different things. And then Wally's is again a different list. This is actually a different this is a different watch list entirely. You can see it's not showing the other two fields because Wally doesn't care about those other two fields. But here are the changes for the one he does care. And I think that's basically it. This was a long and annoying task that I've assigned myself, but so far I think I've been able to get it to work somewhat reliably. It did take 3 separate automations to do.
That's cool though. That's powerful. What I was impressed with is N88. Like just watching that, I haven't played a ton with it, but like for being an open source solution, like it looks pretty robust.
It is. I really like it. I did say last week that it's open source. Mild correction, it's not quite open source. It's very nearly open source. You can look at the code, is what I was thinking, but you do require a special license if you wanted to reuse the code of N8N and some other thing. But my N8N plan right now, I did this entirely on their trial. I don't actually think you need a pro plan to do any of what I've shown. If you do, it's, I think, very fairly and reasonably priced if you were to get it. You can self-host it or you can use their cloud solution. I'm currently using their cloud solution, and they have many, many pre-existing modules. You'll notice I've interspersed predefined things like the filter module, which is really nice. Give me specific items from a list. And the code module, which is just straight JavaScript or straight Python if you prefer to code in Python. So very helpful, very useful. I learned it pretty quickly, and I recommend people just give it a shot. If you're already used to Make, why not try it?
Awesome.
Very nice.
Thank you, Camille. And I think that will get mine on there. Oops.
This has never happened before.
There we go. All right. And that concludes our show for today. Thank you all for coming, and we will be back next week with episode 3. Take care.
Bye-bye.